today I'm going to talk you through my recent trip to Greece. Some street photography, some building photography, some awesome photography, and some brilliant places and people. So, let's get into it. Welcome back to episode 25 of the Burkitt Encounter. Today I'm going to talk you through a recent airplane trip, sky trip. Me and my wife Kirsty did to Athens in Greece. I'm going to talk you through some of my processes, some of my experiences, show you some of my street work, some of my work including buildings and places and things. Talk you through the whole experience, and hopefully you'll get a little bit of something out of it other than listening to a 53-year-old British guy talk bollocks for an hour. Hopefully you'll get some photography tips, some approach tips, some ideas and evidence of how to approach things as a photographer. That's kind of what I hope from these podcasts now. If you've been with me since the start, you'll know I started just as a bit of some way of venting my kind of frustrations as a photographer in life. Didn't really care if anybody listened. It was just a bit of what's that word they use? Cathartic. It was cathartic. It was therapeutic. It helped me get a bit of out into the world. But since then, I've really enjoyed it, and people have said that they've enjoyed them, and I've given out some great insights, and could have done more. So here I am doing more. 25 episodes in, and still talking bollocks. But today, I thought we'll go through Greece, following on from my last podcast about non-player characters in the world, and showed you a little bit of the work in Greece then, but I didn't really go into it in that much depth. I just used it as a way to share the experience I have with NPCs. And so today I thought I'd give a bit more detail about the trip and the places and things I photographed in Greece, because it was a beautiful trip. I mean, as I'm recording this now, we've been back for 6 days, and I wish we were still there. It was great. I mean, the weather was good, the food was great, people great, photographically interesting and stunning in equal measure, and just, I don't know, I never thought I'd like to go on holiday. I never thought I'd enjoy flying. I'm not still sure I enjoy it, but it's a means to an end. But being able to photograph different cultures, people, places, has just really opened my mind to the possibilities photographically, and I guess it's made me expand my remit as a creative and as a thinker, and to the point where certainly my street photography has improved, become slightly different. I'm slightly less fearful of it. You'll probably notice as we go through these pictures, but I've totally given up on my enterprise of becoming William Klein. If you don't know who William Klein is a street photographer. He's dead now, poor lad. Fabulous fashion and street photographer. I think I'm right in saying he was French, but lived in New York. And he wasn't scared of going up to kids in the Bronx and shoving the camera in the face and taking pictures. And I'm trying to get to be like that, but I just can't do it. But also, having spoken to my wife about it, she says that the way I do it is better, more interesting, more real. People don't react because they don't know I'm doing it. I'm talking about shooting from the hip and not really looking at people or making it obvious I'm taking the picture. And she convinced me that it's the way I enjoy it. I think it gives you a slightly different angle on what you're looking at, what people are doing. It means the hit rate's not as good. I mean, I took 3,000 pictures over 7 days in Greece, edited about, what did I edit? 500, so maybe. Sorry, I didn't edit 500, I got 500 edits. They're colour black and white, so about 250 edits out of 3,000, which is not a bad hit rate, considering mostly I'm shooting from the hip. Plus, I also had the camera set to burst, so a lot of those are kind of duplicated, so probably still doing something like 1.5, 2 pictures out of every 10 is what you would call usable or I liked. So did a bit of a lot of street photography, did some not street photography, did some building, did some architecture, did all those wondrous things you know you would do in Athens, or you should be doing in Athens. And I'll just talk you through what I did and why I approached it and why, and hopefully you'll get a little bit something from this. If not, I don't care. I do care, really. I want everybody to get something from it, but not everybody will get everything from everything, will they? The non-player characters out there will not get anything from this. So I'm just going to start off by looking at, I showed this picture as part of the last podcast, but I'm going to look at it again because I didn't go into much detail. This was a view from the window at the hotel we stayed in, and excuse me, and when you're looking at humans from a, I don't know how to say this politically correctly, so I won't. When you're looking at humans out of a bedroom window or out of a hotel window as opposed to at ground level, gives you a different perspective on what they are, what they're doing, who they are, how they are going about their business, what they look like. But more than that, you get shadow in a different place. So for example, you can see the long shadows on the floor on this, but if I was shooting these from street level, you wouldn't necessarily see that because they might be shot from the waist up or feet up. And I think when you add people's shadows alongside them, it gives you a totally different kind of like respect for light and shadow. That makes sense. When you're photographing people, you don't always get to see much in the way of shadow in street photography unless you're getting lots of nice backlit shots and that kind of stuff. But normally street photos are about the light you can see rather than the shadow you can't see. And on this, I just loved how we could see the shadows. I mean, this, for example, over here on the left hand side, the shape of that shadow of that guy there is great. It's just so interesting. Never mind him or anything else, I just love that shadow. Same on this one here, just the shadows are just something different. So when you're looking down on people, you can't not see that. And the human eye is a great thing, isn't it? It can see detail that your camera can't unless you tell it to. So when I'm looking with my naked eye, I'm always thinking about what I'm photographing, how I want it to look, because I've said this before in other podcasts and in other things. For some reason I see in contrast. I don't see in midtones, I don't see in highlights per se, I see in contrast. So when I'm looking at something, I'm looking at the shadows and the highlights and not really looking at much in between. And that's how my brain processes images. And that's what then as a photographer I want to see processed and put out on the page. So nearly the thing I do nearly always is try to slightly underexpose a shot. Although I have noticed in this last couple of trips I've done out in the street, I've been overexposing stuff, but that's down to familiarity with the camera, me fucking up a few settings. But I'm trying to underexpose because it's better to under than overexpose. Easy to rescue an underexposure than an over, but also I just like to be able to fudge that detail a bit more in the midtones and shadows rather than the highlights. So if you look at the histogram on this, it's slightly weighted to shadows. You can see that. You can see that there. A beautiful histogram would have a nice curve across there. But I'm never looking for that because I'm not an NPC and this is not Tony Hart's Take Heart program. We're all perfect and lovely. So first thing I do as always, I strip off the highlights. And I'm just going to drag the exposure down and see if by underexposing it I can lose all the highlights I want to lose. They're still a little bit hot, those highlights, so I'm going to take the highlights off that way and probably the whites as well, just so the detail on the box and on that guy's shoulder is still there once I've reduced the exposure, he says. My keyboard's fucked if I'm honest. Like so. So that's more like what I saw and how I saw it. Now, some people like to see detail. If we push the shadows right up so it really reveals a bit of t-shirt detail, it's nice. But this is where we start to see a little bit of noise coming. And I don't want to see noise really on this. I'm not really interested in noise. I'm interested in the highlights and the shadows. And the reason I've taken all the highlights off is because when I get to the next stage and I make a JPEG, I want to be able to feather those highlights and bring back a bit of oomph and control it better. So straight away there, I'm looking at that and I'm thinking, no bad, quite like that. Although I'm going to pinch a little bit more when we get to the JPEG. Now I could do it in here using the blacks and the highlights, but I'll show you why I like to do it at the next stage. So I'm going to open that as a JPEG, and there we have a JPEG. And you can see here, look, on the histogram, we've got loads of underexposure, which is nice. Tell me there, you're underexposed? I know, right? But what I like to do is use that to feather what I like so. And I'm also going to add 5% in there. So now, if we look at the contrast, see that? Just pinching, highlights a little bit. I'm just going to dial that back a few percent, just so we're not burning out his shoulder. And again, that's all I'm going to do. That is more like how I saw it. When I was looking out the window, that's what I could see. Not the beautiful exposed, everything nicely exposed like you could see on the raw. None of this detail up in the right hand side here I was interested in. None of that detail. I just saw that lovely shadow there. Looked out, saw the shadow, grabbed the camera, quick setting, ping. Thinking in Photoshop, this is what I need to do. So I'm now happy. That's a JPEG. It's good to go. But I'm a sucker for black and white, and I think sometimes I actually do see the world in black and white. I mean, I can't prove that. It does feel though sometimes like I do see it in black and white. And you can see just by looking at the red channel, quite often I use the red channel to how can I put this, to see what's going on in the mono. And the red channel is kind of like, sometimes it's a good place to use as a base to make a real strong black and white contrasty picture. I don't always use it, but sometimes I do, particularly where there's not much mid-tone. I find using the red channel as a base for your black and white is pretty close, more often than not, to what you need it to be. And like, as you know, I like contrast in my monos and my colours, and I'm not going to give it away. I'm going to find ways to make it as striking as possible, to make it look how I felt. So if we're looking at that red channel, you're thinking, how are you going to mimic that, Lance? How do you mimic that red channel? If we look at the blue, it's a bit dull. It's a little bit dull. If we look at the red, see that? Poof, blue, bit dull. Green, somewhere in the middle. Straight off the bat, bang. Ooh, look at that. So how do I use that as a template to be able to make a black and white without doing anything else? So normally if I'm making a black and white, what I would do is I'd make sure I'm on RGB in the channel so we can see all the colours. I would go to solid colour. I would pick a grayscale colour down there, change the layer from normal to colour, bang, I've got a black and white. But you can see it's not as contrasty as what the red channel was. If I just show you the red channel again, look, ping, alright. So I want to mimic that, so how do I do it? So I've made my colour fill. Now all the colour that exists still exists in that picture. I haven't taken it away. I haven't done a desaturation and got rid of it all. It's all still there. It's just hidden by that colour fill mask. I want to bring some contrast, and I want lots and lots of control over my contrast. So what I might normally do here is I would go into the channels panel, hold down Control on my keyboard, or Command if you're a Macer. Select RGB. It then loads in the luminosity into the picture. So all that happens now, it will only adjust the bits that I've selected. And you'll see if I go into curves, remember my curves are set to pigment ink, not light. You can see that because light just means you've got to wang things around. Pigment ink allows you to control. And I click bang in the centre. he says. To make that one on, and I'm going to add 10, 15, 20% output. And now I did that by holding down the shift key and using the arrow up and down keys. Right, so we start at 50, we go 1, 2, 3, 30%. And you'll notice that that didn't affect the shadows, it's only affected the highlights. That's because of the luminosity I loaded in with the RGB. So now I've adjusted the highlights, I want to flip that and I want to just adjust the shadows. Easy way of doing that is Command and J to make a copy of that layer, Command and I to invert it. If we then open it up, click on here and go back to the center, and now if we go up instead of down on the output, I'm going to reduce the output to 55. You see that? We've now got more shadow. So recap, color fill, change the color on that layer from normal to color, so it's just masking the color. Control and RGB to load in the luminosity. Curves, added 30% curves. Copy that curves, invert it, -5, or output is 55, starts at 50. That's now given me, if we look at the original, can you see that? It's only subtle, but it's there. But it's still not that. So I can, between these, change these, make them more, make them less, do all those other wondrous things I want to do. Or I can simply use the red channel and make a picture from that red channel. So how do I do that? Pretty simple. Click on the red channel, image, calculations. In the calculations, we're going to change the blending mode to normal. We're going to make it a new document. So I'm going to click OK. You'll see it's opened a new document here. We're going to image mode grayscale, image mode RGB color. That's now a photograph. So you can either file, save as, call it what you want, or what I do is I'll select all, edit copy, go back to my original picture, make sure I'm clicked on the top layer, paste it in. He says, edit, copy, edit. Well, once it pasted in there. Yeah, paste it in, and you can see that that's exactly the same as that. Now what I can do with that is I can drop it just above the colour fill, and if I want to feather that, you see that? I can do that, and that's a little simpler than messing around with these two layers to try and get it roughly where I wanted it. I know that's exactly where I wanted it. And that's the two kind of most used methods I would do to make a black and white to show the contrast that I think I see the world in. The idea as a photographer is when you're expressing yourself through your photography, you want to show what you saw. You want people to be in the moment. And if you've not heard of him, Albert Stieglitz did his equivalence work in the 1940s, I want to say, where he took photographs of the sky, and the idea behind those photographs was he showed you what he saw, and that's my ethos. I want to show you what I saw. I don't think I literally see the world in black and white, but I certainly see the world in contrast, and that is more like when I stuck my head out the bedroom window, the hotel window, looked down into the square. That's what I saw, and that's what I want to show to you. And the processes that I've learned from many people, mostly from Guy Gowan, using combinations of his ethos and some of my own, which are different to his, but certainly live in the same ballpark. They get me to the place where I want my pictures to be. all through control, all through being able to repeat it, all through instinctively knowing what to do post-shoot, because I know this process, because for 20 years I've used it pretty much for that whole time. So that's my first picture. It wasn't the first picture I took, but that's the first picture I edited, because that's kind of where I was at. That's what I loved. And then, we spent a week or more going round Athens, visiting various places. I spoke about the Parthenon on my last podcast, which was about NPCs, and now it was full of them there, but I didn't show any edit process. So what I'll do now is I'll look at my favourite one from that set, and I'll go through again the edit process for that. And again, when you're photographing things, to be a player, not an NPC, part of that is understanding what you've got to do in post, and you align what you're doing in shot with what you need to do in post, and if those two don't marry up, your pictures will be run of the mill. So again, I'm shooting with an end product in mind. I know what's coming next, I know where I need to go, and I know what I need to do to get there. So the first thing I'm doing at this is I'm looking, that's how it was shot. Now the limitations of the RAW file and the R6 are quite good, thankfully, because if you look at this, I've slightly overexposed this in places. And which is a bit of a schoolboy error for me, but you've probably got 8 or 10 stops of saviour in these instances. So if I'm looking at this picture and I want to show you how I saw it, then I need to be making it more like how I saw it and not just going what the camera gave me, even though a camera was set up professionally. And the only thing that's slightly odd on this one, if you look at it from how I shot it, is I want just a little bit more on these pillars, because I think they're too good to hide, although I do like to hide things. So I'm going to add some shadow back in on the pillars, and just enough so as to not bring loads of noise, because the last thing you want to do is bring in loads of noise, and if I look, that's not too bad from a noise perspective. So, done all that, I'm happy, exposure wise, rescued it, well done Lance. Gonna open it, and then the next thing I'm going to do is rotate it so I can see it properly. There we go. Now there are a few things in this which really annoy me. It's quite a bit off in terms of how I want it to be positioned, but also that god-awful crane. I mean, you travel 2,000 miles to photograph something and it's got a big fucking awful horrible crane in it. But we'll deal with that. But that's pretty much kind of what I saw-ish. Just going to pinch the highlights again. If we open up the levels, I'm going to give myself 5% extra on the shadows, because I really want them shadows to pop. And again, just going to bring that to there. So we've now got, if we look at that slight contrast shift, can you see that? It's more like what I would expect it to be. Lovely. And then I'm going to flatten it, because I'm not going to do anything. Select, layer flatten. So we're back to one image. Pretty much ready now to get rid of that god awful bloody crane, which just pissed me off the whole time we were there, to be fair, because I mean, who wants a crane? So you can see I've just used a combination of select and clone to get rid of that crane. Didn't do anything ultra magical. You can find out how to do that in 5 seconds on what's it called? That bloody thing. Oh, I fucking hate that. Okay. Select, deselect. Some twat in next door making a right fucking row today and all. Cunt. Dee puppy blinch. So look. That looks a bit rough, that blinch out. So I didn't do anything too rocket sciencey to get rid of those scaffolds. I just did that, and then again, just used a bit of clone and a bit of stamp, and they're gone. So now I'm happy with that. Only thing I want to do is make a black and white. So again, I might look at the. Now can you see the difference in that red tone and in the red tone we had on the previous image? So clearly there's far too much mid-tone in that. I wouldn't use that red or that green. Blue's not so bad, but it's a bit washy up here. So I'm not going to use any of that process. But it is interesting to look in the different colour spectrums, how the picture looks so different. I mean, red's probably the best, but again, I'm going to use my traditional solid colour, like so, and then I'm going to load some luminosity in it and use the curves just to pinch in, and there we go, job's done. Colour, black and white, and like I always say, they're the similar processes I use for all my black and whites and colours, and you'll not go a million miles wrong if you use those processes. They're tried and tested for me. They might work for you, they might not, but again, if you don't try, you won't know, and if you don't know, you'll never know. So as I'm wandering through Greece, I mean, I've said this before on my other podcast, that we've got loads of graffiti. It's like Graffiti City, and quite often when you see graffiti in cities, no pun intended, it's a bit offensive, it's a bit crap, it's just a bit, but first thing that surprised me is how much of it there was and how it was accepted, which is great, I guess, because it means artists can be arty. And it allowed me to frame a few shots. As you can see, this lady sitting on the phone having a fag. It kind of lent itself to the kind of grotty backdrop that she had. And I was just doing my usual thing, walking around, seeing interesting stuff, photographing it. Coming across people in the park loving. One thing I did start to notice, though, particularly with the non-player characters, was everybody's on a fucking mobile phone. I mean, I know this. I mean, I'm addicted to this fucking thing as much as anybody. But when I'm walking around a city and trying to photograph interesting things, you'll see as we go through these pictures, nearly every person I photographed has got a phone and they're like looking at it, gawked. And so it was nice to see this couple having a love, not gawked. Now, they might have been on a phone 5 seconds before or 5 seconds after, but right then in that moment, they were just doing a bit of player character stuff. These two look completely gawked. I mean, nice Converse. They actually look a bit like they're dressed dead alike, don't they? Glasses, white top, black. I wonder if they were I wonder if that's a uniform. Similar bag. But completely gawked. Out in a beautiful ancient monument, not looking at each other, not talking, gawked. Same, another couple. I think this is Hadrian's Library from memory. Oh, I fucking hate windows. Come on, you piece of shit. Yeah, both completely gawked. Although she does look like she's giving him a little bit of what you doing at, what you looking at, what's going on there, doesn't she? Looks a bit like she's not very convinced that he's doing what he said he was doing on that phone. But again, another couple on the phone. This lady on her own, again, in beautiful scenery, sitting in a taverna. This lady sitting in a taverna, at first glance she looks like she's on a phone, but she's actually not, is she? She's wiping her mouth or whatever she's doing. I often find quite most interesting people are people that are sat having a beer or sat eating, because they're just engrossed in what it is they're doing. This girl standing in the shop, I'm not quite sure she'd have been so happy if she'd have seen me pointing the camera at her, but again, because I'm shooting from the hip, she's no real idea what I'm doing. So yeah, I'm not sure how happy she would have been. Should have seen me taking the picture, although she seemed quite pleasant in character, so you never know, she might have not cared that much. I tried my best over the week to get some what I call good pictures of the fruit sellers, because they're always really interesting, and they're that engrossed in selling their wares that they're not really paying attention to taking pictures. This is one of the better ones, I thought. It's funny, isn't it, how there's like, probably 1,000 strawberries there, but people are like, which is the best strawberries? They're all fucking strawberries. Just eat them. But again, interesting people going about their NPC business, buying, selling, totally oblivious to the world around them. I saw this guy outside the music shop, went past this music shop about 10 times by accident, because we were finding his way around the city. Always kind of like, oh, we've been here before, doing a lot of that. And I thought Muse was a nice name for the music store. Again, he's just having a minute, isn't he? Waiting for punters to buy some stuff. Past that shop a few times, as I said, most times it was really busy. Just on this occasion, he just happened to be taking a minute, but I think he framed himself nicely for me, sat there on the right hand side on that step, which allowed me to frame it up nicely, just to get some of the store in, some of his wares. Didn't shoot that from the hip, stopped and took that picture, which is nice. This one of the boss, the guy outside his store, having a little minute to himself, probably thinking, how the fuck did I get here? Maybe he's not a player character, not an NPC, sorry, maybe he's a player. Maybe he's thinking, I've got to get out of this world, I've got to get out of this reality. He looks a bit like he's had enough, doesn't he? A bit like he's fed up. This guy, we sat down to have a beer at this restaurant, and just as we sat down here, we got piss wet through, because there was a lady from the same restaurant upstairs watering the plants, not thinking I got customers downstairs, but we weren't bothered. It was quite funny. And the waiter, the garçon, did come and apologise afterwards for us getting piss wet through. Didn't get a free beer though, which was a bit, not in that place anyway, but we did get plenty of free beers as the week went on. But again, sometimes people just present themselves, don't they? So again, this is not shooting from the hip, just put this up to my eye. I don't know whether he saw me at any point taking pictures, but he didn't seem that bothered. He was too busy having a conversation, again, with a piece of plastic in his hand, which seemed to be a theme for the week. This lady eating her lunch. Wonder what she was thinking. Was she thinking, oh, this pile of shit? Or was she thinking, oh, quite enjoyed that? Or is she thinking, wish he'd stop taking me a picture? Just mooching around the city, looking for interesting things and interesting people. One thing we did come across with these guys, now I don't normally I do photograph homeless people all the time, but I don't normally use them and talk about them, because if I'm going to do that, I want to do something positive with the pictures, raise awareness, raise money, make myself feel better about it. I don't know. On this, I'm going to show this one because we were on a double-decker bus. We were doing a sightseeing tour, day 2 or day 3, and I came across this guy begging in the street, and I took a few as I went past. So if you look closely, it's slightly blurred because the bus was moving. But I said to Kirsty, fucking hell, look at his leg, oh my God, what's happened? And we both went, oh God, it's terrible. So I took the shot. So I thought I'd talk about it on the podcast and whatever when I got back. Then a few days later, we're walking back to the hotel, and there was another guy sat near the hotel begging at the side of the street with a very similar injury on his leg. Only this time, because we were at ground level and we could see it close up, we could tell it was a fake injury. And we had like a minute of realisation. Oh, fucking hell. So that mean that other guy who we saw when we were on the bus, whose leg was hanging off, was a fake injury. And then as the week went on, we saw 3 or 4 more with the same thing. So clearly, in Athens and probably other cities, it's a ploy to beg to have some kind of injury for sympathy to get money. And I just thought, you ingenious fucking scrubs. I know everybody's got to cut a living, but it's a bit wrong, isn't it? It's a bit naughty. Very naughty. Anyway, it was an eye-opener to me. I was trying to get a picture of this guy on the bus. We were on the double-decker bus and there was some Americans there and they were all around us. And this guy, he got a really interesting side profile, but he would never sit still long enough for me to get a picture. So that was the one I ended up getting. He stood up to take a picture of some monument. I thought, fuck it, took him. But actually, it ended up giving me quite a much more interesting picture than I would have done. And again, it comes back to the thing that we're driving through Athens, a historical city, and nobody's soaking in the city and the architecture and the ancient monuments they're taking pictures of. So when they get home, they'll be going, oh, look at this, but they won't have actually soaked it in. They probably can't remember without seeing on the phone what they saw. And even as a photographer, doing the streets of Athens, doing the Acropolis and all the other wondrous stuff, I'm soaking it in. I'm taking it in. I'm remembering what I've done. Because as well as take a photograph, I had a minute to look at it. And none of these did. They would just take the picture, spend a minute, and soak any of it in. Which for me kind of ruins the holiday. What's the point? And one of the things me and Kirsty want to do is want to go places and we want to experience them and remember them. And hence why we realised after the day on the bus that walking around is the best way to see anything. Not just photographically, but to actually enjoy it. This couple, I thought they were having an argument. I saw this and it looks like she's pushing them away. But Kirsty said, oh no, I saw them just after you took a picture and they were loving and laughing. So maybe it was like a jovial thing that was going on. But I took the shot because I thought they were having a bit of a Barney. And I thought, well, that could be interesting. And again, I think it looks slightly different. It looks slightly more menacing in black and white than it does in colour. Colour does look a bit more friendly. Black and white, what's going on there? One thing that did strike me about this street was the floor, the marble floor. It's just fucking beautiful, isn't it? You won't get that in Rotherham. I'll tell you that much. More fruit stuff. Guy in the doorway. Again, he's on his phone. This couple walking down the street. Let's be kind to her and say she was using Google Maps to find where they were going. Right? She wasn't texting a mate to say, I'm on holiday. I'm having a great time. Again, friends here. One on the phone, one not. What's going on? Maybe they're directing each other as well. A couple of girls sat waiting for the lunch. Glued to the tech. Non-player characters. That's nice to see somebody enjoying the lunch and not on the phone. Quite sure what's going on there. He doesn't look very happy with her, does he though? Interesting people. I came across a couple of ladies who were shooting vintage cameras outside this vintage store for them, looked like a bric-a-brac store. And she got that one there. And she got that one there. And they were kind of like mates and they were like using their old Polaroids. It was nice to see. I didn't stop to see the pictures. I was just interested that they were using vintage cameras, and interestingly enough, I didn't realise till I came to edit this picture, but this lady's got a great big bandage on her finger. It's funny what you don't see as you're taking or looking for pictures, isn't it? It's really interesting. People watching. It's one of mine of Kirsty's favourite pastimes anyway, even when we're just in the pub doing a bit of character assassination, not taking pictures of them, just observing people in the pub. It's quite a funny pastime. And again, everything revolves around the phone taking the pictures, doesn't it? Here's a mother with her kids going through with this Disney kind of world cafe. more interested in taking pictures of it than actually enjoying it. And it's kind of, I get it, I get it. It's so they can post on Facebook, look where I am. You know the old adage now, don't you? If it's not on Facebook, it didn't happen. But I do think it's a bit sad because I'm not quite sure how much they're enjoying the place rather than taking the picture of the place. And I am not guilty of that because I do soak it up. I don't just take the pictures. I do soak every little thing up that we experience. This one again, a girl on Corner Street. Again, I thought she just presented herself to me as a photo op. I mean, I wish that car and them cars hadn't been there. It would have been a nicer shot. But just how she stood, how she's positioned, lent itself. Shadows coming here from the trees or whatever's there. I just thought it was great. Again, black and white. Tells a slightly different story. Makes it a little bit more edgy. Again, I just used my normal black and white conversion on that one to get the final shot. This passed this street a few times, that lovely view from the little town called Plaka, which is part of that Athens, but it's like old worldy, kind of slightly different, well, massively different in terms of buildings and whatnot to the rest of Athens. But just the view up that hill, up to the Acropolis and up to the Parthenon and Temple of Athena. I just thought, what a stunning view to have and walk past every day if you live there. You come across interesting characters. If you're paying attention, you see them anyway. I mean, I just notice these things. I don't know whether it's photographer's eye or it's because I'm a player character, or I don't know what it is, but I just noticed stuff. And we were just sitting having a rest in this little square, and I just saw this guy having a quite animated conversation with somebody on the phone. So I snapped the shot, and again I think you see it in colour. Yeah, it looks like a guy who's hanging his head because he's pissed off, he's frustrated, he's annoyed, or he's upset. But when you put it into mono, I think it just sucks you straight into what's going on a bit more. It gives you a little bit more. Ooh. That guy looks stressed, doesn't he? It looks like he's at the end of his rope. And it's amazing the difference between colour and black and white, and what that brings. And again, no rocket science involved here, just observation and an awareness to, even when you're relaxing yourself, to try not to daydream because you might miss an opportunity. I'm sure, in fact I know it drives Kirsty to distraction, that's who I am, and that sometimes I'm 10 feet behind her on the street, but it's just, she married me. She did marry me. This was the third or fourth day, and I'd woken up really early. Don't know why, just had. So I was looking out the window, looking for opportunities, and I just saw these 5 guys walk past, and they were coming towards me. So I just waited. I'm hanging, 3rd floor balcony. And at this point, normally I would have my camera on my harness. When I'm walking around the streets, I don't just have my camera in my hand on a strap. I have it on a harness, so it's like bolted to me. So if somebody wants to nick it, they've got to take me with it. And I'm hanging out of a 3rd floor balcony here, holding my camera like this, holding it as tight as I'll shaking that tight, trying to take the picture because I'm not paranoid about dropping it. And I don't know if you're the same, but whenever I'm on the edge of something, the edge of an high rise or whatever, I'm always feel like in a minute how my feet are going to go. I always get that tingly belly feel. So I'm like that, trying to take this picture. And luckily, they're quite synchronous, aren't they? They came past quite synchronized, close enough, I think, to get that shot. And I'm quite happy with that because, again, it gives you a totally different perspective on people. How people look, what they do. I mean, look at this guy at the bottom of his stride. Look how wide his stride is compared to this guy. I have a small stride. I walk really slowly. That's another thing that pisses Kirsty off. But his stride there, it's like massively different. And they're all like individual. But again, there's always one, isn't there? Do you know what I mean? There's always one who has to be on the phone. Shall we give him the benefit and say he's directing him? Is he? Are we allowed to intrude like that? It's like he's looking at a picture of the Acropolis or something. What's that is on Instagram? Maybe he's looking at my Instagram feed. Anyway, Again, lovely picture of 4 guys, 5 guys even, just strolling past the hotel at 6:30 in the morning. In fact, they were either on the way to work or somewhere, or they were on the way back from a nightclub, I don't know which. But again, it just presented that opportunity, but I was really hanging the camera straight over the edge of the balcony, and it fucking scared me a bit, if I'm honest. And again, you change it to black and white, it almost then could be night time, couldn't it? If we go cycle through the different channels just to get what the black and whites do, it's amazing when you look at the highlights, how they change between the channels. Look, seeing at first if there's anything there that's just ready how you saw it, not really. So, what I saw, probably, more like that. His coat's a little bit hot, but so again, you're seeing things, you're shooting with an end game in mind, knowing that in PS you're going to have to make a few edits just to bring it back to where you wanted it to be and what you thought it should be. And I think that's the way forward, to break out of that normal, my picture's alright, think about end game. This day Kirsty, I think it was a Sunday, Kirsty read about once a week they do the changing of the guard, where they do like a big performance. So we were sat kind of across the road waiting for that, and I was just people watching, and the part of the subway, the transit, the metro, whatever you call it, came up at this junction, and it was just a nice place to observe people, again, going about their dailies. There's a little park close by. Some of this is shot from the hip, some of it I'm sat. Again, big shadows, beautiful. Just looking at people. I photographed this guy a bit later. I'm sure I photographed him a bit later. He's walking past with a couple of drinks. This girl works on the big bus. She's a bus conductress, we used to call them back in the day. Selling tickets for the big bus, just standing there. This is the guy, look. That's the same guy that sat down before. And again, just observing people going past, making observations and photographing them. And there's no Pulitzer Prize shots here, but for me they're interesting because they're real life, real people. And sometimes when you're photographing people in crowds, particularly on streets, it's the people who weren't your focus who are the more interesting. What are they thinking? What are they doing? All those NPCs. This lady was quite funny. She was reading the map and she came all the way towards me. I don't know whether that's a British thing that we do when we're thinking, we stick our tongue out. She was clearly doing that. And again, black and white can make a great difference in terms of what you think of the person and the shot and the feel. This guy, quite scary, but he came right underneath me, so I could not take the shot. Another guy on his device again. So street photography it's a weird one, because sometimes you don't get anything, sometimes you don't get anybody interested, and it's no good just photographing people, because most people are just normal. There's that many NPCs around, they all look and act the same. It's rare that you get somebody that looks and acts differently, so I'm always looking for quirks in people, little changes in people, differences in people, to make them interesting to photograph. And I've got a few on there, but there's nothing in there which I'm like, I can't wait to share that. There's one or two maybe, but generally speaking, no. And then we went to the stadium, to the Olympic Stadium, which is a rebuild of the thousands-year-old stadium, Parthenon, that stadium. Which again, when you're in it, when you're sitting in that, and you're like, oh shit, man, it's massive. It's even on a wide shot, you couldn't show it how big it is. 70,000 capacity, and it felt more like 170,000 when you're in there. But just a big, massive expanse of marble. But made, again, because the sun was like, I don't know, 10 o'clock in the morning, so it's still rising, it's quite low, getting nice shadows. It was nice from that perspective. I mean, there's like, I don't know, 4 or 5 different rows of seats like that you have to climb up, so they were probably a third of the way up, something like that. But it makes for nice patterns and shadows. So I'm just trying to use them, get the people in symmetry and use them. This was a group of ladies who would have clearly come from, I want to say, China or Japan. I don't want to sound too wrong there, but somewhere Asian. And this lady on the end was setting the picture up here and having to set the timer going there and run round, climb up and join them. And I just thought, I could have took it for them, but thought, no, bollocks, I'll get my own shot. So they're all jumping at the same time. So it was nice to be able to capture that. Again, it's not a Pulitzer Prize winning shot, but it's interesting because of the dynamic behind the shot. We decided this day to walk from this stadium here up to a viewpoint on a hill, whose name escapes me also. And you can see when we go up the hill, the view, and you can see it was a nice day. It was warm and sunny, but you could see from the highlights and the patterns on the ground where the sun was and the clouds were shading it. It was quite nice, actually. It's a bit of a snake, isn't it, if you look at it? But that was the view from the top of the hill. Beautiful, beautiful view. I mean, it took us an hour to walk up it, and I was absolutely fucked. I mean, like I said before, I'm 53, overweight, got dodgy knees, dodgy discs in my back. It was misery walking up there. And luckily the last bit was cable car, so that kind of saved it. But worth the walk up, just for that view. That's the stadium I spoke about before, where we'd walk from to that. And that's the Acropolis from that standpoint, and it's like, fucking hell. Just beautiful, just a beautiful, beautiful city. For photographer's dream, but the dream can only happen when you optimise it. And like, with the title of this episode, you just got to get out there and shoot it. And the biggest problem I think most photographers have is they dream about doing things and never do them. But if I was going to do this commercially, I wouldn't have gone then. I would have been a different time, place. Obviously, I wouldn't have had Kirsty in tow. I wouldn't have made her suffer that. But to photograph these things and get them how you would perfectly want them, you've got to get them. Just go and fucking do it. Stop talking about doing it and go and do it. Just get out there and shoot it, because if you don't, somebody else is going to do it. And you're just going to be sitting at home, another NPC, going, I wish I'd done that. Oh, I wish I'd gone on a plane and gone. And that's what I was doing for 30 years, wishing. And what's that old phrase off Bad Santa? Shit in one hand, wishing other, see which fills up first. There's a lot of truth behind that saying. And again, the rest of the kind of week, mooching around, just trying to find stuff. I mean, like this guy has his shop. I love this. He's got a shop at side of the road selling junk. He sat on probably most of the junk. Old car with junk on it, just selling shit. I just think that's brilliant. I just think it's like, I mean, in England, he'd be moved on. I mean, the other thing as well, I noticed, I think I got a photograph of it somewhere, just motor scooters, little scooters, little motorbike scooters everywhere. One guy, he'd just got eggs. He was carrying eggs. Bloody eggs on his scooter, and he got eggs piled up a mile like this guy, look. Just a gas canister on the back of his scooter. I mean, in England, that would be like 6 points. But there, it's like normal. There was one guy who got a great big piece of wood on the back of his scooter, and police just waved him past. No, go this way, that road's shut. And I'm like, have I just seen this right? Am I seeing it right? Is that really true? Is that what happens? And it was the same in Malta as well. I mean, clearly you have to have a license, insurance, and that stuff, but the relaxation of rules is phenomenal compared to England. England is just like the pits for rules. So yeah, I spent most of the week trying to get really good shots of the fruit sellers, and it kind of worked, kind of didn't. But they were really interesting. I love the bananas hanging everywhere. And, you know, street photography is kind of like it's one of those, it's still, I think it's probably always going to be a nemesis for me, because I'm always wanting more, I always want different. But I think you can only photograph what's in front of you, and you can only photograph the people and things you come across, and you have to make the most of what you find when you're in the street. And sometimes even the most like innocuous or the most like non-obvious situations are actually quite interesting. So I tend to just point the camera at anything I think might be relatively interesting, like this lady eating a cake at the side of the road. Again, it's no Pulitzer Prize winning shot, but it's just an interesting, observation of people in Greece. And sometimes that's really all it needs to be. It doesn't need to be, the world beat or the best shot you've ever seen. It's just storytelling. It's visual storytelling. And occasionally you get one, you think, fucking hell, wow, I've nailed it. That's it. It's a money shot. Occasionally it does happen. I mean, this guy outside the shop, he's a real mean-looking bastard, and he probably wasn't. He's just probably, the hat and the coat. But as we walked past him, he never once looked up. He was like a fixed gaze on the lady he was talking to. He never once looked up. And I'm like, just look up. Let me, look up. Let me get the picture of you. And the fucker wouldn't look up. So, but I kind of quite like that. I kind of quite like the hand. And the fact that he's looking down at it, and he's got his shop behind him with all the stuff in it. And he looks like a mean miser. He looks like it's 50p. That's what it is. No negotiation. And it's just an interesting character portrait, I guess. Technical wise, it's just a photograph. There's nothing like you couldn't do there. It's just right moment, I guess. And maybe if he had looked at me, maybe it wouldn't have had the thing that I thought it should have had. Maybe that would have been missing. Maybe it's just that was the shot that should have been. But I think some of that is me being critical after the event, wanting perfection all the time, I guess. These two girls again here. I finally found a pair that didn't have the phone in the hand. But I wonder what they were waiting for. I wonder what they were thinking. Because they're both clearly miles away, aren't they? This guy in the top corner here, though, is he seeing me and he's thinking what you're doing? Or is he looking at somebody else? Well, like I said, quite often it's the people in the background characters that make the picture or more interesting. Be interesting to speak to them. What they're waiting for? They're waiting for food, waiting for a drink. Have they fallen out? What's going on there? But again, when you look at the black and white, when it adds a little bit more to it, maybe I should have cropped him out. Maybe I should have just disappeared him. Changed the narrative a little bit. But I guess you got to think, haven't you? What's the point in doing street photography if you're then going to fake the narrative anyway? Yeah, it's probably better just to leave it in. Have the truth. This lady we found a fucking brilliant pub in Greece called James Joyce. It was an Irish bar. And the reason we went to an Irish bar is two reasons. One, because I'm fussy with food, and nearly always in an Irish bar you can get chips. But also, we were going to watch the Liverpool game there on the Wednesday night. We decided not to, but we were going to. So we found this Irish bar, and it was great. And we were just sitting, observing people, and this lady come in with a friend, and I just thought, fuck me, it's Sherlock Holmes. What kind of, strange attire, I guess, is what drew me to her. But she was one of those oddball old teachers that you often see. That's just quirky. But she sat there eating her dinner and drinking her Guinness for a couple of hours, and I just found her quite interesting in an oddball kind of way. But again, it was like, for me and Kirsty, it was like 18, 19 degrees, quite warm. We were in shorts and t-shirt, and she's dressed like it's middle of winter. So I'm guessing she must have been a local, but it was quite interesting to observe her and a friend eating lunch. But she does look like she's come out of a different time. She's from another world, almost. But again, that's the good thing about street photography, isn't it? It's that looking and observing. Now this guy here, I'm going to show you him because you can't see him. But we were walking down the street in Placa, I forget where we were going. And this guy just whipped his told you out and had a piss at side street, just decided we're having a piss there, and I thought, take a picture, can't see him, can't identify him. Just thought it was strange, odd and funny. Although it happens, doesn't it, in most cities probably, that people need to go, and they go. This was about 10 o'clock in the morning maybe, so, had he had time to get tanked up with beer? Was that it? I don't know, maybe he's just one of them kind of guys who pisses in the street and thinks nothing of it. But again, interesting scenario happening in the street, and if you're not out there trying to shoot it, if you haven't got out and gone shoot it, you're not going to shoot it, are you? You're not going to see it. This is that Disney restaurant again, which is Disney themed, and this young girl was watching a street performer thing. I just thought she had a real good look on her face. But interesting again, kids there enjoying herself because she's not being sucked into the mobile phone world yet, and mother's in background on Facebook. Looks where we are. I just thought her expression was great, really interesting. This couple deep in conversation again. If you look at the colour to mono, I think the mono is a lot more interesting. Takes a lot of the narrative away, so you have to build it yourself. Her expression's quite good, isn't it? Really intently listening. I think she loves that guy. Making her happy, whatever's happening, isn't it? I always have to get the Potato King in. Potatoes. So, it was slightly different, I guess, photographing in Greece, because people are different to anywhere else I've been. It was a little bit like Malta in that it was laid back and relaxed, particularly in Plaka. The shops were great, the atmosphere was great. To be honest with you, I think people wouldn't have minded if I'd have gone up to them and taken pictures. I don't think people didn't seem that pissed off by it. There were lots of people taking pictures. This couple here, Temple of Zeus, just really enjoying the moment. We've got to get a selfie or we weren't there. Again, you just couples on the phones. Shall we say they're looking for directions? I'm giving a lot away for directions today. People are just up to the phone. It's almost as if it didn't happen if they didn't have a phone. Where'd you go on holiday? Oh, I went to Greece. Prove it. Oh, I didn't take my phone. Well, you didn't fucking go then, did you? And that just seems to be the world. It's sad, isn't it? This guy, again, I kind of observed him coming towards us, and he looked, I don't know, at first I thought he was homeless, but I don't think he was. I think he was just he was dishevelled. It was his way. And the way the sun was bouncing off his head and cluttering those highlights, I just thought I've got to get this shot. And this is a shot from the hip, so I got a sequence of about 6 pictures as it was coming past. And I went with that one because that was my favourite, but I didn't realise until I came to edit them later that the drinking is called Hell. I just thought, that's just great, innit? Couldn't have fucking wished for that if I'd wanted. I thought it was going to say, I don't know, fucking Red Bull or something, but Hell 0. It's just interesting people doing interesting things, and again, if we alternate between the colour and the black and white, for me it's always, particularly in street photography, it's the black and white that wins, because it just takes a little away and you have to look more, think more, feel more, and investigate more. It's more striking in black and white than it is in colour, I think, anyway. That's kind of it for my deal through Greece or through Athens. And I think, again, back to the hotel room, looking out, I mean, this is just great, isn't it? Well, I said before about people being obsessed with their phones and things can't happen with that phone, but these two guys here, they're sharing a phone. And again, I kind of like the position, I like the lines. Just happened to be looking out the window with the camera, saw them, took the shot. Again, clinging onto my camera for dear life because I was convinced it was going to fall off my hands and smash on the floor. But they're, just two guys looking at their attire and their hair, two old guys sharing a phone. I just think it's quite cute, actually, isn't it? It's quite, they've no idea I'm there. But it's quite cute that they're sharing a mobile phone. Hey, is Frank there? Yeah, put fucking Frank on. Let me talk to him. all right, middle of the street. In fact, this is not just a street, this is like a massive roundabout with all the hotels and shops on. It's chaos, mate. It's like wacky races. And these two guys are just having a phone conversation with somebody. It's just great. And again, if you don't get out there and shoot it, it's not going to shoot itself. It's not going to just land on your laptop and be there for you to share on Instagram or wherever. You've got to, as a photographer, have the presence and the dynamism to get up and shoot it. Whether it's a portrait, whether it's a street, whether it's a building, whether it's a sky, whether it's a thing at night, whether you've got to wait 5 hours. If you don't go and fucking do it, no one's going to do it for you. And one thing that frustrates me about the non-player character photographers is they all seem to just do the same things. It's easy. Done another studio shoot, done another studio shoot, done another studio shoot. Oh, did you ever try doing sky at night? Oh, no. Did you ever try doing long exposures? No. Did you ever walk around the street with a camera and see what happens? No. Many of these people I speak to, I wanted to, or thought about, they never actually do it. I've been guilty myself of, I right want to do it. You know, for me it was, I'd love to be able to photograph New York. I'd love to be able to photograph Gigantea. I'd love to be able to photograph Parthenon. I'd love to be able to photograph Pantheon. But I don't fly. So what do? You sit there and you see a picture come up on Insta or Facebook or Fuckwit or whatever it is, New York City, and you think, fuck. And then you see a picture come up Parthenon in sunset and you think, fucking, I wish I'd took that. And then one day your wife says to you, look, I want to travel, so you're going to have to either get over your fear or go on my own. And you go, fuck. And then you go, all right. And then you take a short flight to Amsterdam, which I did, 45 minutes from my house. Shit myself for 45 minutes. Shit myself on the way back for 45 minutes, but thought, actually, if this means I can go to New York and go to Rome and go to Malta and go to Greece and anywhere else, then it's a pain worth enduring. So 12 flights further on I am now, and I've done 4 of those things, and there's many more to go. Going to Krakow later in the year, not just to go to Auschwitz and stuff, but to do some street photography and some architecture photography there, as well as I've had a little holiday. Then we're doing Chicago and Iceland. And I just think, as a photographer, you've just got to find a way to get out there and shoot it. Otherwise, everybody's shooting it for you. You're doing fuck all. You're just another monotonous, run-of-the-mill guy with camera, non-player character who might as well just go on Facebook and like other people's work and never achieve anything. And I'm glad I've got over that fear. I'm never going to like flying. I'm never going to volunteer to fly. I do it as a means to an end, but I'm glad I did, because it's meant, certainly from a street photography point of view and from a photographer point of view, I've got out of my comfort zone and I've experienced things firsthand. And as a lover of history and as a person who doesn't believe most of the history we're taught, you can make better decisions and be more informed when you're seeing things firsthand. So for me, it's ticked so many boxes personally that I can't now imagine not travelling. And as much as I love going on holiday with Kirsten, I mean, I don't spend my whole time taking pictures. A couple of hours out of the day, the rest of the day we're chilling. But it's given me the facility and the ability to do this stuff, which I never thought I'd do, because I didn't want to get out there and shoot it. So the biggest piece of advice I can give you as a photographer is, if you want to become something other than an NPC, get out there and fucking shoot it, because it's not going to shoot it for you. It's not just going to land on your laptop. You're not going to... It'd be extremely unlikely that you could just go and sit in your back garden for the rest of your life and make work that's interesting, brilliant, and people are going to love. Having done it myself for a couple of years, it's a great starting point and it's something good to look back on, but you've got to keep moving forward. You've got to keep pushing as a photographer. You don't keep pushing and pushing and pushing. Even the most ardent, hard-working, forward-thinking, sideways thinking, lateral thinking, critical thinking photographers among us just become NPC photographers, when we don't want to do that. We want to be better than that. We want to be out there creating interesting work. Doesn't always have to be world beating. Doesn't always have to be the next, Ansel Adams. Doesn't. It just needs to be work that shows what you've done, shows that you've got interest, shows your outlook on life, shows your opinion, shows what you think of the world. People will like it. People will be interested in it just if you do that. None of the pictures I've shown you today I would consider to be my best work or my most interesting work, and they ain't going to win no prizes. I'll not be submitting any of them for competitions. In fact, I'll be doing an episode on competitions soon, so look out for that. It's just a photographer getting out there shooting, observing the world, sharing my observations with you, sharing some of my processes with you in the hope that it might inspire you to go and have a go at it, or it might give you a shortcut to get to the end game where you've been trying to get to be. That's it. I'm not trying to be something I'm not. I'm not saying I'm better than you, although I'm better than a lot of you. But we all have to get out and shoot, and if we don't shoot and practice, then we're all just bullshitters, aren't we? We're all just sitting here making shit. And I don't want to be that kind of photographer. I don't want to be the guy that shoots 2 shoots a year and thinks he's great. I mean, I shoot maybe, I don't know. What we're on now, 11th of April, I've probably shot 5,000 pictures this month. And shared about 10 online. Because that's the kind of volumes you're working to improve, to get better, to make new stuff, to do stuff that's interesting, to keep yourself relevant, and to try and not become a non-player character photographer, which, following on from my last podcast, I'm desperate now to make sure I don't fall into that category, because they're bloody everywhere. Alright, anyway, thanks for listening. I've gone on too much. Showing you a few new techniques there, discuss some of my work. If there's anything you'd like me to do, give me a shout. If any topics you'd like me to cover, any editing tips, tricks, or other you'd like me to cover on the podcast, let me know. Will, if you would be so kind to like and subscribe to the channel on any platform that you're on, that's YouTube, Spotify, or Patreon. Give us a like on Instagram and Facebook, that's always appreciated. Spread the word, ask people to come have a listen. Hopefully they get something from it. If you think I'm talking bullshit, drop a comment below and tell me. If you think I've made some sense, drop a comment below and tell me. Other than that, have a great week. Have a great summer coming up. Get your camera out and just get out there and fucking shoot it. Cheers.
About a way to get you out my mind. Think about a way to get you out my mind. Think about a way to get you out my mind. Think about a way to get you out my